The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our webcast on building a solid foundation for a data catalog with a Universal Business Glossary. I'd like to start off with a few introductions with the team on the call with us. So let me just bring up my next screen. So it is our pleasure to introduce Len Silverstone. He's the president of Universal Data Models, and Len is the best-selling author, consultant, and speaker with over 30 years of experience integrating organizations' informations, systems, and people, and is well known for his data model resource books, which describe hundreds of reusable data models. In addition, Len is also known for his universal data models. These reusable models help to develop higher quality data models in less time. We are excited to announce that Len has now created Universal Business Glossaries as a follow-on to the Universal Data Model. And we'll be talking about these benefits that they provide in today's webcast. Our second speaker is Jeff Giles. Jeff is Santel's principal architect and has been a long-time enterprise architect and data governance specialist, who's been addressing the issues of the convergence of enterprise modeling and data governance during the past several years. You are, of course, listening to Robert Lutton, Vice President, Santel Consultants. As this presentation is about business glossaries, we'd like to start out with two polls that will get a pulse from the audience. And I'm going to launch the first poll. So you'll see this poll. So let me bring it up. So this poll is about, is your organization currently developing a business glossary? So I'll give you all a moment and then I'll close this poll and then we'll share this. So I can see that all the people there seems to have settled down there. So I'm going to close this poll. So if you haven't got your close in, this is just a quick option for us to give a pulse for the audience, things like that. And I know we've got people joining in, so it just gives us an example. So let me close that and let me go ahead and share that. So we should see the poll saying that 44% of the, or 42%, sorry, of the organizations are currently developing business glossary, 25% no, it's not on the horizon, and 33% are viewing their options. Again, we want to thank you for that. What we're going to do is we're going to also then look at the second poll. So let me see if I can bring the second poll in. So go back to manage polls. So the second poll, if I get it coming up there. I got to drop down, okay. Hide down, okay. So thank you for hiding that. I will bring up the second poll. And again, a very simple poll here where we want to know, is your organization using templates to jumpstart your business glossary? And again, we're just after some basic information from the audience here. I'll take a moment, let you guys have some feedback. We would expect, and we would hopefully see that there's a large percentage that may not be. So we're going to close this poll. And I'm going to share the results of that. So hopefully you'll see that. So with that, I'm going to hide that. It should come back to my presentation. Jeff, are you seeing the presentation now again?
I am.
Great. So in today's presentation, we'll be speaking about how to develop a practical approach to minimizing understanding and risk when developing a commonly accepted vocabulary of business terms. For the format for this webcast, we'll be starting with Len, who will be talking about how to jumpstart development of a business glossary and how to develop an effective process for developing the business glossary using templates. Then we'll move on to Jeff, who will demonstrate exploring the Universal Business Glossary, leveraging Erwin's Business Glossary product by reviewing an easy-to-navigate structure, naming of business terms, and consistency of definitions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change presenter. So Len, you should have this presentation on your screen. If you can go ahead and present, and we're seeing your screen. So Len, over to you. And Len, are you on mute?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Pleasure to be able to connect with you and share this information. And I have one simple point, which is how do you jumpstart a business glossary effort to save a substantial amount of time and cost in developing the business glossary effort. So we've had many clients that have used these templates where we have thousands of definitions defined, and they can use this as a jump start, as well as the structures and the domains. And I'm going to share a number of examples with you of these domains, of these types of structures that you can use, of these types of terms and definitions, and also of the process that we use in jump-starting a business glossary effort, which substantially reduces time and cost. So first of all, let's talk about the difference between a glossary and a dictionary and a catalog. There's a lot of confusion in the field about this. So a glossary is a business view of the information, of the term, of the definition, perhaps some policies and rules, but in business language, and this is what we're going to talk about today, versus a data dictionary is a technical or systems view. So in a data dictionary, you're going to see systems information, data types and formats and system and lineage and so on. The Universal Business Glossary is designed to jumpstart the glossary effort. Our universal data models, which is a different effort about a whole bunch of data models, that's designed to jumpstart the data dictionary effort. And then you have a catalog, which is a view into both the glossary and the data dictionary, and it also shows the mapping between a glossary and a data dictionary. Now, why develop a glossary? Well, it helps greatly to improve communication in the business. So very often we use the same terms. Some will use vendor, some will use partner, some will use supplier, and this creates miscommunications and misunderstandings. Many misunderstandings happen even at the level of customer, where we had one client where the data governance person said, oh, we have 7,000 customers, and the business said, no, we have 22,000 customers. And he said, no, according to this definition, we're not including prospects, we're not including people or organizations that bought from us over 30 years ago. So even in terms of basic things like how many employees or customers we have, there are misunderstandings. And what a glossary does is it helps simplify systems and really gain control over our systems environment. If we're not aware of the language that we use, this could lead to all sorts of system anomalies. Now, in glossary challenges, there's many. There's misunderstandings, there's consistency issues that we define the same things many different ways. And there's a great number of terms. Many of the glossary efforts that I've been involved with, very often we're dealing with thousands of terms, at least hundreds of terms, but usually thousands of terms. And it takes a huge amount of time to do this. With the time, and this could be many months or it could be even years I've seen, it can lead to many errors and data quality issues and real business challenges. So how do we develop a glossary that gets across this meaning and do it efficiently? Like one of our clients just recently brought in all these template definitions, and they were basically able to get a really good size glossary in within a couple of months. Not every single term, but many, many hundreds of terms within a very short time. So doing it efficiently. And it also helps resolve issues. And it's a shared repository of these terms. And then there's people issues. So very often when you look at a third party to get this jumpstart, it can even help resolve some of the people issues involved. The key thing is it's a huge amount of work to do this. So how can we do this? Well, let's use templates. Very, very common, basic sense. Let's use templates. Templates will help save time, money, and increase the quality. Now, there's templates for domains, and I'd like to give you some examples right after the slide. There's templates for the structures. So within a domain, like a high-level domain, like if you're in healthcare patient, or if you're in manufacturing the product or the part area, there are these hierarchical structures that we've laid out to give a jump start to that. And then within these structures, there's terms and definitions. And what I'd like to cover is, first of all, the guidelines. We use 16 different guidelines when we create a definition. I'm going to share those with you. And then there's a process for using templates, and that's what I'd like to share. Plus, I'd like to give you a couple of examples. So, for instance, in the universal domains, now we use these models for almost every organization, but sometimes an organization won't fall into a specific industry. So we'll use the universal domain model. Everybody on the phone, do you have parties that you deal with? Do you have roles or entities that you deal with, like customers or partners, employees? So of course you do. Everybody has these parties that we deal with. And then in your organization, you offer something. Maybe it's products or services or parts, and you have pricing. And then you take these various parties to transactions, and the offerings, and you make some type of commitment. Generally, we call that an order, starting with a requirement, then maybe a request like an RFP, a quote, and then it leads to an order, maybe an ongoing agreement. Some of our clients will call this a commitment. Some will call it agreement, but there's some area to say this is where we make the commitment. Then a universal business domain is after we make a commitment, okay, now we fulfill the commitment either by shipping things and logistics, shipping parts, or by getting work done. Let's say it's manufacturing, we have to custom build parts, or we have professional services, we have to do activities and tasks. And then after that, here's the fun part, we do an invoice, which is a request for payment, we track the payments, and then we do support functions such as finance and accounting, and human resources, and information technology. So very often we'll jumpstart the effort using these 9 areas and then say, well, let's reorganize the domains. So we say, oh, well, maybe there's a domain under geographic area, and we say that's a domain. We include that in the party area to say, hey, these are where these entities are located. But sometimes we'll break that out. Sometimes we'll create additional domains or less domains. And then we also have domains applied to industries. So we use all of these as templates as a jump start instead of starting from scratch. So in insurance, same type of structure, except instead of orders, you have policies, and the fulfillment has to do with claims. In professional services, the order or the commitment is an engagement, and then it's in deliverables. So one of the largest professional services uses this structure. Ernst & Young, they use this structure to say, hey, let's organize our information in business terms. There's many healthcare organizations using these models, and in their world, they have healthcare offerings, the various procedures, and then a party, namely a patient, will come in, or a member, and set up appointments. And then the delivery or the fulfillment has to do with a healthcare delivery, which might be a prescription fill, or it might be an exam, or it might be an x-ray, or so on. And then you have all the standard functions. So if we look at financial services and banking, you might have a client domain, you might have a partner domain, you might have a financial product saying what types of accounts can they open. You set up an account. Then there are agreements in these accounts. There's account transactions, there's accounting, there's rules, there's work efforts, there's IT, and there's HR. So this would be a jump start in terms of the domains. In manufacturing, you have customers and partners and products. And by the way, this is only a piece of the domain model. There are other things like vendors or workers or employees, but this is a high-level view that you can use. And we use this very often when we help clients to say, hey, let's start with an overall broad brush model. And then after this broad brush model, we can delve into to say, hey, let's just go into the customer domain and flesh out this customer area using the structure and the templates that I'm going to show you in a little bit. Or professional services. Here you have engagements and clients, and these are the types of information that might be in a professional services models. And we have many other domain models for different industries. And so many of our clients have benefited, even in the first day, by establishing domains and subdomains in very short amounts of time. Then within the domain, like, oh, there might be a customer or a financial investor or a patient or a member domain. And we say, okay, within this domain, we have these structure models. So the Universal Business Glossary comes with a mapping, a hierarchical mapping to say, hey, here's all the types of data, and there's definitions on every one of these. This is a small amount, but here's our common roles that are included in almost every industry. And then there's a whole bunch of other areas of name information, and there's demographics and marital statuses, and genders and languages and relationships, and all these different categorical ways to structure it. Now you may say, well, that's not how we structure it. Well, the idea is let's put it out as there may be things we've thought of because we've been doing this for decades. So there may be things that we thought of that you haven't thought of. Oh, I can use that idea. You could even use it to quality assure things. And then what you can do is, with a data cataloging tool, easily change the structure. And then you say, well, we're in financial services, so we also have structures for all different industries. So in financial services, you'd not only have all of these roles, but you'd have other roles: retail investor and financial advisor and financial institution and institution of investor and credit rating agency and underwriters and so on. So there's template definitions for all of these terms, but this is the hierarchical structure. Now, what I notice in a number of the efforts that I've been involved with in business glossaries, they don't have this whole overall structure. So when people define terms, there's not a well thought out map of where to put these terms and then how to relate these terms to each other. So with this whole Universal Business Glossary, that's what we've done, is taken, hey, this is what's common in these industries. And then the idea is to customize it for your use. So to me, it just, I don't really see how you could do a business glossary effort efficiently without using some type of template like this. In the polls that you guys shared with us, it looked like, of those who were doing the business glossary efforts, I'm glad to see some of you were using templates, but it seemed like less than half of you were using templates, and I would highly encourage you to use templates. By the way, this is one template. Some of our clients will say, hey, let's use your template and then any other templates we can get a hold of as well. But with this is specifically designed for business glossary efforts. So it makes no sense to do what this guy is doing and say, oh, let's develop a definition from scratch. Let's really use templates. Let's save time, let's reduce cost, let's increase quality, let's reduce mistakes, let's get insights. One of our clients in financial services saw things in the Universal Business Glossary that they said they never would have thought of, this idea of saying, wow, all these things that we call employees and workers and financial investors, they're actually roles that people and organizations play. And then you get into other things like, well, can a bot be a be a customer? You know, so there's a bot is buying something. So there's all these insights that we're giving you kind of a jump start on, things that you may not have even thought about. And even standards that we've incorporated into it. So for instance, in healthcare, the HL7 standard, we've included terms like individual healthcare practitioner, where it makes sense within these terms to jumpstart definitions for that. Now, I give a whole course on guidelines for doing definitions. As a matter of fact, I even give a 2-day course on Business Glossary. And in that course, we spent a couple of hours on these guidelines. So I'm going to share this with you in just a minute, so you have what the definitions are. In the course, we give all sorts of examples of what to do, what not to do. But the 16 guidelines that we use are: use standard business terminology. Don't contain anything that has commentary or opinion. So we actually look at all the adjectives and adverbs, because very often there's hidden commentary. If you see a word like beneficial or great, be careful. And don't do a cheeseburger definition. This is where I give Bob Seiner credit for. He says, hey, the cheeseburger definition is where you define a cheeseburger as a burger with cheese. So don't define the term using the names of the term. Describe what an instance of data is. So very often I'll look at a product definition and I'll say, oh, a list of the offerings. Well, a product is not a list of the offerings. It's a single offering. So describe things in terms of what's an instance of this term. Account for past, current, and future. Account for all the subterms and describe the subterms, like a ship to customer is a type of customer, but how is it different? A type of customer to whom the delivery goes to. Account for all the subterms. If there's a ship to, a bill to, a end user customer, an installation customer, account for all the subterms, and don't put policies or rules in the term definition. We might have these in the catalog, but not in the definition. Don't repeat the definition of one term in another term. So for instance, you don't want to say a customer is someone who has bought products, and products are goods, services, and solutions. Don't put that in the product area, just link it to the product definition. Keep it as short as possible, but complete as accurate. Think toward the future, provide examples, use reference materials, use outside references, document your sources, and make sure they're quality definitions with spell check and grammar. So these are the guidelines we use when we do these definitions. So for instance, here's an example definition. Customer is a role played by a person or organization that has purchased, been shipped, or used products. So what we're doing is including all the subtypes. We're including past, present, and future. So we're saying, hey, now, by the way, we're defining a customer as the past and the present, not the future. So if somebody's going to buy something, they're not a customer. Now, what do I do? And we give an example. What do I do? We have a 5-step process. So first think about key points, then think about what are some key questions with a customer? What are some key phrases? Then we say, can you use this template or not use it or customize it? Finally, craft the definition. So for instance, in customer, oh, here's bullet point key points. It includes person, organization. Can a bot be a customer? If a bot buys online, is that a customer? If it's a customer, they've purchased or been shipped or used, what about if they are in charge of the installation? Are they a customer? Now that's where you get into the second point to say, hey, list out useful questions and say, what are the major questions, the major misunderstandings? So here's the definition. Now, what about parties? Does it include installation or just people that have bought, been shipped, or used products? So our answer is yes, it's bought, been shipped, or used, but not installation. Can a bot be a customer? And we're saying no, bots are not customers. And by the way, yours could be different. You could say you define it. This is the template. Is a prospect a customer? And we say, no, they're a different role. Now, in some of our clients that we work with, they say, no, a prospect is a customer. The key thing is you keep it consistent, but by having a template that very often it brings out these points, this can help you a great deal. What about resellers? Are they customers? Yes, in this case, these are customers. Now, warning, each enterprise needs to assess these types of questions. But what the template does is it brings out things like this, things that have been thought out that you may not have ever thought about. Many of our clients have said this. Wow, one financial institution in Wall Street said, wow, these templates saved us. We never would have thought of these in determining financial investments. A telecom company in Europe said that they actually defined their terms, and then they used some of these terms and realized, oh my gosh, we didn't even think about these, and we've been doing this for a couple of years and we didn't even think about this, and they had to kind of re-socialize their definitions. So now we list out the phrases. So it's a person or organization, they've been purchased, been shipped or used, and it includes resellers. Do we use the template, not use it, adjust it? The decision, let's adjust the Universal Business Glossary template. So we just took the definition as it was, but we included a modification saying customers also include resellers, which may or may not be the case for your organization. But for this organization, we said that here's the definition. It's a modification of what we had before. Here's another example in product to say a product is a good, service, or solution, combining goods and services that is, was, or will be. So here in our guidelines with tense, we're saying, hey, if something was a product, that's a product. If it is, it's a product. Or unlike customers, if something is considered to be a product in the future, that's still a product. And they include both tangible goods, which are called goods, and non-tangible offerings, which are services. Later on, you'll see that the definition is actually this first part, and then further description, which is going to be in the glossary, is going to be some of this other text to further describe it. For example, a good can be specific types of pens. Now, in this case, what you'd probably do is modify it for your organization to say, hey, what are the examples in your organization? But you have a template to define product. And what you may do is go through that 5-step procedure and say, hey, what are the key things? Do we have solutions? Do we call them goods and services, or is it items that are both products and services? How do we customize this for your environment? In this case, we said, okay, let's customize it by saying, hey, a product is only by our enterprise. So in other words, a competitor product, so a product that a competitor offers, is not considered a product, and that'll be considered a competitive offering. So here we've made a slight distinction. So this is the process. Use a template, think about these 5 things, i.e. bullet points, some considerations, some questions, okay, list out the key phrases, are we gonna use the template, and then craft the definition. And this will save hundreds or thousands of hours in my experience. The average agreed upon definition, we did a study at one client where we said, hey, to get an agreed upon definitions, on the average, it takes about 4 hours to get it all agreed within an organization. Now, some definitions will take days or weeks or months even, and some might be quicker, but on the average, it's 4 hours. And by using a template, no matter how long it is, on the average, we'll save 50% of the time, which only makes sense. If you're using a template, obviously it's going to be a lot quicker. And not only that, but the changes that you make, it tends to be a lot more stable because we've thought about things that you might not have even thought about. Now, if you think about it, so how much are you saving? Well, there's generally thousands of terms in a business glossary effort over time, so you're going to be saving probably thousands of hours. It may be more, it may be less, but a tremendous amount of time, and quality and consistency will be improved. So don't start from scratch. Please don't start from scratch. It only makes sense. Don't reinvent the wheel. It only makes sense to jumpstart these definitions. So that's the key point that it's really a no-brainer. With that, I want to hand it back to Jeff to take the next.
Thanks, Len. Give me a second or two here to just show my screen. Alrighty. So Len's talked quite a bit about building a business glossary, and hopefully you've gleaned from that a lot of information about just how much effort goes into building one of these things. So we have this concept of a universal business glossary, and what a universal business glossary is it's a library of thousands of predefined business terms organized within industry-specific knowledge areas. And you can use this with any business glossary management software. So the different business areas include healthcare and travel and energy and other things like that. And within those specific industries, the definitions are more specific and tailored to those areas. In addition, you can actually cross over these different industries and begin to link terms from, let's say, healthcare and insurance so that you can understand how those things might relate to one another. So let's start off by talking a little bit about the data catalog architecture. Okay, so first thing we do is we start off with this idea of a universal business glossary. So these are all the terms, all the structures, all the relationships, everything you need to actually build the glossary in a tool. So in this case, we're looking at the Erwin DI product. So you can import those into what Erwin calls the Business Glossary Manager. So now you've ingested this information into the Business Glossary Manager, which can now begin to manage your glossary, do things like data governance, do things like change management, and things like that. The other side of the data catalog is the idea of metadata in terms of a data dictionary. Now, there are a number of different ways that you can begin to build this out. You can reverse engineer databases. You can look at XSDs. Len has created a bunch of data models under the area of universal data models. You can actually reverse engineer these directly into this Erwin product because they're Erwin models. And then they get ingested into the metadata manager. So the metadata manager is responsible for capturing, storing, and managing all of these data dictionary elements. Now, the connection between these two things is what makes your data catalog the catalog, in that your data dictionary has references to your business glossary, and your business glossary has references to your data dictionary. So it really just looks at the differences between how IT looks at things and how the business looks at things. So your business user portal gives the end user access to all of this information. So to drill into this business IT alignment a little bit, let's take a look at it in some more detail. So the alignment between business and IT is really just two different perspectives. If you look at this diagram in the middle, there's this concept of an order. Now, if you look at it under the technology side, the technologist looks at order in the context of what system is it in? That is, databases, is it part of an ERP, a CRM system? What system of record is it located in? Then there's the technical specifications. What's its data type, its length, its precision? What code sets might be associated with this thing? And then technical names. Often in IT, they abbreviate things because in storage, you can't store more than, let's say, I think 128 characters, and in some instances only 30 characters. So there's a lot of abbreviations that go on in the technology side. Now, if we look to the other side, and we start looking at people in business, they look at an order in a completely different context. They're looking at it in terms of what are the business policies that surround this? What are the strategies, the goals, things like that. Business rules will tell you, what are your usage rules? What are the regulations that govern this thing? What are the actual data governance processes that we might have to go through and rules? An order is just one type of idea. You can look at it in terms of sales orders. You could also look at it as purchase orders or work order or lots of other different kinds of orders. So when we think about an order, it's really just a contract or an agreement. So the concept is that there are related terms to an order. So they have a completely different perspective on this idea. So when it comes to managing a data catalog, what we needed to be able to do for us is tell us what is the business meaning in what context. As Len alluded to, you can have a bill to customer, a ship to customer. Those could be totally different customers in different contexts with different definitions. The business policies and rules, okay, what restrictions do we have around the use of the data? Does it fall under GDPR rules or any of these other rules that are out there? Term governance. If you have a business glossary or a data catalog for that matter, where you don't govern the change, then it's going to be difficult to sell this to non-business users or to other users inside the organization because they can't trust it. So you have to have some mechanism by which you control change. And then the data catalog connections are, what is its technical name? What is its business name? What system is it in? Where can I find this thing? That has to do with the lineage between the two. So I'm going to do a quick demonstration of how this Universal Business Glossary is used in the context of the Erwin DI suite. So first thing we'll take a look at here are the terms and the structure. So in the DI suite on the far left-hand side, you can see the column that lists the name of the business term from a business perspective, followed by a definition, then it's workflow status. What in the course of change management, where is this? Who's the data steward for this particular term? And then the catalog hierarchy actually shows us our individual knowledge areas and the structure that the business catalog falls into, or the glossary falls into. So if we drill into this product definition, we can see that the definition itself is a very concise definition. A good, service, or solution. Solution combines goods and services that is, was, or will be offered for sale by the enterprise. This is where we want to be very precise and very concise about what a product is. Now, there's additional information that will augment this and provide more context to something, and that can be captured in the description area. So any additional information that supports the definition can be included in the description area. So this covers the business term. What is its meaning? What is its meaning in the context of a good? Now, you'll notice that we have a good, a service, or a solution. But the next thing I want to know is, how is that related to other terms? So if we know that a product can be a good, a service, or a solution, we can look down here at the bottom of this screen here. We can see that there are downstream associations of a product. So a product is a high-level idea, but it's broken down into more specificity as a good, which is tangible, a service which is not tangible, and a solution that may or may not be both the combination of a good and a service. So that's a business term that's associated with another business term. Now, what about the data dictionary side of things? Well, we also want to know where can I find a reference to a product in the different systems that we have out here. So if we look at this screen here, this is the association with the technical metadata. So in the column name, this is where we'll see abbreviations for a term, in technical notation, the table name, reference to what table we'd find it in, environment name, what is the name of the application that contains this, and the system name, what is the system that contains it. So in this case, it's the CRM system running the Salesforce application that has a table called product 2, where we can find the product code and the product description. Now let's take a look at the lineage. So we saw the business terms and that a term can relate to a term. We also know that it can also relate to technical metadata. So when we look at the term lineage, what we're looking at here is on the far right-hand side where we've got a product. And in this product area, we can see that we have a data steward. And then coming off this product, there's a branch called associated business terms. So in associated business terms, we're looking under the general business knowledge area down into specifically products and services, and then further refined down into a product category, where we can see that a good, a service, and a solution all relate to this. So that tells us that product from a business perspective can be looked at as a good, a service, or a solution. Now the other branch down here, associated technical metadata, now tells us where can we find that information in our world? Well, it's in the CRM system, in the Salesforce application, in the table called product 2, and there you can find a description of the product as well as the code name for the product. So that gives me the lineage so that I can span across my data dictionary as well as my business glossary. And all of these, of course, have to be tied back to rules and policies around data usage. So if let's say if a product can be retired, what are the rules around a retired product? Can we sell it? Can we not sell it? So we have to understand the context that we are looking at the definition or the term in. Now this is just a single lineage for a single term in one area of knowledge. But let's take a look at it in terms of different ontologies or different industries. So in the top here, this is the lineage we just looked at. Down here, we're looking at it in a different context, because remember, in different industries, it may define a term differently. So if we look at this idea of an organizational role, which is just a general classification here, we can see that in the used by in insurance, which is a more specific industry, there's also a people and organizations in insurance and organizational roles within the insurance context. We have things like an insurance provider. And in healthcare, we can follow this out and see that it might be related to a third-party administrator. Again, these are just two different roles played within the different industries of insurance and healthcare. Now, the last thing I want to touch on before I end this and hand it over to Robert is this idea of change management. We can create terms, we can create a whole taxonomy or structure around these terms, but if we can't manage the change, then we're going to find it difficult to sell this to other people who are going to use it. We're also going to find it difficult to manage it because we might end up with duplicates, we might end up with lots of synonyms. So we have to have some mechanism by which we do a process of change management. And here you can see, if we look on the left-hand side and read across to the right, on create, this is the actual submission. Then we go to a review process, then an approval process, then a pending process, and then finally publication, which takes it from being a candidate term to actually being an approved term so that it can be used. So this is a linear flow, but you can define lots of different branches off of this flow. You can also see who's involved in which process. So for the review process, we have data steward, and in the approve process, we have data owner. So with that, it helps us gain control over the glossary and the data dictionary. So that concludes the demonstration part. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Robert so he can finish up with the solution overview.
Thanks, Jeff, and special thanks to both you and Len on that. Let's come back to the key point that we talked about throughout this presentation on how organizations can save time and money by using a template approach with the Universal Business Glossary. As Jeff and Len have mentioned, the Universal Business Glossary provides a jumpstart that greatly reduces the time spent on creating and or developing a business glossary. Organizations also need a vital technology to manage the glossary. We've loaded our Universal Business Glossary into Erwin's Data Intelligence Suite. The three main components that we've shown are the Business Glossary Manager, where you can build glossaries of terms and relationships, publish improved terms, and manage the rules and business policies. The Metadata Manager, where you can automate reverse engineering of data assets, and the Business User Portal, where you can view and publish content from the Mapping Manager in the Business User Interface, search and filter for content, and allow for self-service reporting. We also thought it might be a good idea just to give people an idea of what is included in the business glossary. And so we've actually got a mind map, which shows a hierarchical structure of the terms graphically. We have a Word document showing the hierarchical structure of the terms in the numbers and indented notation. In fact, you actually saw a preview of that in one of Len's slides. And then the Excel term and definition source file, which provides a complete set of terms and definitions that can be imported into any data catalog. We, of course, have used the Erwin data catalog file, a version of the Universal Business Glossary that can be directly imported into the Erwin data catalog if the organization happens to be using the Erwin data cataloging tool. If not, the Excel term definition source file can be used to import to any data cataloging tool. So we really wanted to leave you with what's next. And so hopefully some of the folks on this call are interested in moving forward the next steps. And if you're interested, one of the things we'd like to do is have you engage with us. For example, if you'd like to, you can give us a term to define, and we'll show you how to increase the quality while saving time. If you feel that you already know the value the Universal Business Glossary will provide, you can reach out to us directly and schedule a one-on-one customized demo with your needs with Santal. In fact, for either option, please contact me at the email provided here, robert.lutton@santalconsultants.com, and you can visit our website for more information. So with that, there's a couple of minutes left on the call. We've got a couple of questions. So I noticed that some people have been asking questions, so we're going to go through and ask those questions. And one of the questions I'm going to start off with is right off the bat, which is a question that you addressed partially, Len, but the question we're asked is, what is the ROI for this product?
Great question. So I gave an example of an ROI where you say, hey, look at how many terms and look at how much time you could save. So if you look at the example I gave, you'd say, okay, well, the average term, if it takes you 4 hours to do, if you buy that, and by the way, you might do your own metric on it to say, hey, how long does it actually get a term to be recognized and move throughout the organization? So you come up with your own metric on that. And then you say, well, how many terms do we want in the glossary? And then how much time that we can save? And you could figure that out pretty easily. We estimate about 50%, but by just saying, hey, do a term without a template and do a term with a template. Now, that'll give you part of the ROI. And even in that part, it's thousands of hours saved because you save thousands of terms, and I'm going to save, a couple of hours on each term. But then I also think a big part of the ROI is when you define a term and you socialize it and you miss something. It's like, oh, shoot, I didn't even think of the idea that a customer could be a bot, or that a customer could use it via installation customer, or that a order is different than an agreement. So very often customers will they'll say, wow, this has saved, in one client, just by misdefining one term in a financial services company, they said that cost them $1 million because they got confused on one very, very important term. it happened to be the net asset value of an investment, very important term, but they misunderstood what that term is, and it cost them $1 million. So I would say those are two big factors in ROI. One is you could just multiply the time savings, but the second is what does it cost you when you get it wrong? And there you could do different calculations, but usually the return on investment compared to the cost is many, many, many times what you'd be paying to get these templates, like 10 to 1, or could be 20 to 1. So that's a short answer on return on investment.
Excellent. Thanks, Len. And obviously for people on the call, if you got more information about the ROI, you can get in touch with me at the email and phone number down there. I had another question that had come in that says, is hierarchical such as roles in your example, would it be a taxonomy or glossary? Does that make sense to you, Len?
Yes, yes. So, so taxonomy is a hierarchical structure that lays out the meaning or the taxonomy. You could actually use this as a taxonomy. And so in our Universal Business Glossary, you could consider it a taxonomy. It happens to be in a data catalog term, in a data catalog format, but yeah, it's in the same format that a taxonomy would be in. And by the way, it's a little bit more than a taxonomy, because in taxonomies, you usually don't have terms related to other terms. That's where you get into ontologies. So it's not exactly a taxonomy, it's not exactly an ontology, but it has aspects of those things. And by the way, a lot of our clients use it to jumpstart their taxonomy, their ontology, their semantic layer, their universal language. They use it for all different purposes.
Excellent. Question come up, Jeff, is how do I get the terms from the business glossary into the data catalog tool?
Yeah. So a lot of these data cataloging tools have a text kind of import functionality. Sometimes it's a CSV file, sometimes it's an Excel file, but essentially they have various column headings, and the information, falls in under the categories of the columns, and then it will populate your catalog. So in the Erwin example, it will import the structure, that is the hierarchy, as well as the terms, as well as the relationship between a term and another term, or a term in a data dictionary element, as well as stewardship. So I can't speak for all of them in how they structure it, but essentially it's a text import.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. Another question that came in, I'm going to throw this out, Lynn, this may be one for you, is that if we, what can we do if the language of my customer is other than English?
Good question. I mean, there's a lot of universal translators. There's a lot of software that will translate from English to another language. So we currently don't support providing it in multiple languages, but I am thinking that you should be able to use Universal Translator products and take this, and by the way, I've given these talks all over the world, and talked to audiences in many, many different countries, Korea and Japan and European countries in the Middle East, and the terminology does translate, because you're talking about basic business functions, of course, but you'd have to run it through some other software to get it in another language that we don't provide as of yet.
And certainly, putting my sales hat on here, Len, as a partner to Universal Data Models as well, this would be something that we could certainly take a look at. So for the person that asked that question, would be really interested. If there is interest in the Universal Business Glossary and what it provides, but you need it in another language, then let's have an offline conversation for this.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, so just one last question, then we'll wrap up. This is being recorded, and everyone will be sent a link to the recording. And we'd certainly like to have a one-on-one discussion if this is of interest to you. Last question we got here, and I'll just read this out, but are business glossaries, should they be documented as nouns primarily?
Interesting. By the way, I see one other question that I'd like to answer after this.
Sure.
But as nouns, Jeff, did you want to take a shot at that?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a couple of different ways to look at this. If you look at it in terms of just describing things, then those are mostly nouns. But there are definitions of what a particular process is. You could add that to the business glossary, but the thing that you want to be aware of is to not start putting in the business glossary something that is really a business rule or a calculation for something, which is really a kind of business rule. But if it can be described, then it can go into the business glossary.
Perfect, thanks. And Len, you had one other question.
I would say many of the terms would be include verbs too, like a role played by. Played by would be, you're playing a role, and so a lot of times you do want to use verbs. Adjectives and adverbs is where you want to be very, very careful about including commentary and opinion. So, so we do include adjectives and adverbs. It's something, but it's very, very subtle where you say, oh, it's a beneficial, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, that's putting a positive spin on things, and so it's tricky.
Excellent. And I think, Len, you spotted one other question that I've missed. I'll let you bring that up.
Yes, there was one other question where somebody chatted in to say, hey, Len, I have 3 of your books. Thank you, by the way. Will you have a book for Universal Business Catalog? Thank you for that question. I've thought about that question, and the answer is perhaps. It's not. The focus, our focus has been, I'm working with Sandhill I've been working with Sandhill for quite a while on this, and we're very focused on the product of the Universal Business Glossary. So for right now, we're focusing on this offering. In the future, I think it's a great idea to have a book on this as well. There's so much information in the product that I think what we could do is probably take kind of a lot of the high-level ideas, just like we do in the universal data models. There's a product for the universal data models, and then there's the books that have kind of the high-level concepts. It's a great idea, so thank you for proposing this. I'm assuming that your proposal is a suggestion to say, hey, you should think about that. Well,
you'll certainly see more information coming out on the Universal Business Glossaries. You'll see both Sandhill and Universal Data Models Inc. Doing more webcasts. They're looking for a Dataversity webcast coming out in the early part of the new year. We'll be at trade shows, and I can honestly say it is a pleasure working with the like-minded folks like Len and Jeff on the call. So I'd like to thank both you gentlemen for your time today. And as I say, hopefully this is of interest to the folks that have attended here. And we look forward to hearing from you now and in the future. Thank you very much indeed. Bye.
Thank you.